Okay, so thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, actually, being 1 minute past noon. My name is Eilish Courtney. I'm on the Hot Lunch Committee, and I'm delighted that you're all able to join us today on this beautiful sunny day, just like it is in our picture, just the way it always is in Vancouver. Anyway, I want to begin by acknowledging that I'm on the territory, the ancestral unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh people. And I know many of you are calling in from different parts of the city, and we also want to acknowledge the keepers and carers of those traditional lands as well. I'm delighted to be joined today by a colleague, John Madden. John is, as you can see, the Director of Sustainability and Engineering at Campus and Community Planning. He's a double alum with a BA degree from UBC, as well as a graduate degree from the School of Community and Regional Planning. John brings over 20 years of experience working for local municipal government, international agencies, and nonprofit consulting work, working to advance sustainability policies and implementation strategies. John's also a sessional instructor at Harvard's Graduate School of Design, teaching on the subject of sustainable master planning. So when we asked John to do this, we picked this date, and then it's perfect timing, frankly, because UBC has just launched a university-wide Climate Action Plan 2030 engagement process from March 29th to April 16th for UBC community members to learn about the plan, to ask questions and share perspectives. So as I said, our timing is perfect, and John will share a little bit now about himself and also how we as staff can engage in this process. So I'm going to hand over to him now, but just before we do that, we're going to run a poll. So Jenny will put the poll up and we will ask you a couple of questions. Did you know that UBC had declared a climate emergency in December 2019? And have you changed any behaviors in response to the 2019 UBC climate emergency declaration? So. Then when we'll see those responses in a moment, and then I'll hand over to John to provide his remarks for today. Have you all voted?
Still voting.
Still
voting.
Okay.
Well, it's really, you know, it's interesting.
What have I done? They're thinking, what have I done? First one was easy, but the second one was, oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting a good response rate for the first question, which is really interesting. So, you know, 93% of the folks are, you know, familiar with the fact that UBC declared a climate emergency in 2019, which is impressive. And on the flip side of that, so have we changed our behaviors in response to the 2019 climate emergency? 54% of you are saying yes, 46% no. So I think that's really instructive in terms of what we are trying to do in terms of the climate action plan. And it gives us an opportunity to kind of plug everybody into all the activities that the team's working on. So I'm going to bring up a slide deck here, and great to see everybody. And thank you, Eilish, Stacy, Jenny, and the Hot Lunch team for putting this together and inviting me to speak. Very timely. I think it's very opportunistic in terms of the launch of the Climate Action Plan engagement process, which is just starting. And on a very topical subject that is really having impacts on really the way we are doing things across the university. So thank you for that. And really happy to be here today. So Eilish said, you know, start with really kind of announcing who I am. And for those that thought, you know, you were joining the John Madden that was going to be talking about, you know, electrical and computer engineering. I am not the professor John Madden. He is my namesake at UBC that teaches interestingly, things on different materials, solar energy, battery technology, doing some great, phenomenal work. John and I exchange emails on a regular basis, both intended for me and intended for him. So we're constantly exchanging emails. Interestingly, we have never met in person, but we exchange a lot of emails together. I am also not John Madden, the former NFL coach or sports personality or game sponsor. Although John Madden, the former sports coach, is kind of taking a key role model in terms of he doesn't fly. He was famous for basically traveling across the US on bus and train. So he's kind of a role model for our ambitions to reduce our air travel. And I am not the John Madden, the New Jersey Devil player, number 11, but my name is on the Stanley Cup, so I'll take credit for that. I am, however, very lucky to be John Madden, to be working at UBC. I consider myself the climate action planning coach, working with a fantastic team. And I just want to call out 3 individuals that are really kind of leading the efforts on the climate action effort. And that's Bud Fraser, who many of you know, Leanne Bilodeau on the UBC Okanagan campus, and Max Niewasser, who's really going above and beyond to culminate all the inputs and activities. And there's many of you that have been involved in the development of the climate action planning process to date and continue to be incredible champions for the efforts that UBC is taking. So a little bit about me. So I'm Vancouver born, raised. As Eilish mentioned, I went to UBC, got my degree at UBC. Immediately after graduating from UBC, I started with a Japanese mapping firm, basically developing a regional atlas that was intended to be part of the navigation systems that were inserted in cars. And that was back in the 1990s. So that's the start of the ambitions around navigation. I left the Japanese economy, went in a spiral. They closed the Vancouver office. I then joined the city of Vancouver as an engineering technician in water engineering. I spent a couple of years there before I got the opportunity to move to central area planning at the city of Vancouver, working with Larry Beasley. And in central area planning, we had the great opportunity to kind of create what's called this new philosophy of planning, and it was called Vancouverism, much created through the efforts of Larry Beasley and a team of experts. And this idea of Vancouverism was being exported across the globe. I had the opportunity to go to Abu Dhabi to start up a sustainability initiative called Estadama. And it's very much like, the LEED green building rating system. And it was really to be a transformative piece of regulation that would transform buildings across the UAE to be more sustainable. And while I was working in the Middle East, the Vancouver Sun ran an article on, all the Vancouver connections that are being exported globally across the world in terms of the efforts around Vancouverism, but also this notion of progressive sustainability in urban planning. And so we had this opportunity to kind of work in these different parts of the globe to really instill sustainability. And it was just interesting because to be named as part of this group with folks like Arthur Erickson and Larry Beasley, James Chang, Peter Busby, really at the forefront of sustainability. And at the bottom of the page, you'll see some familiar folks, Michael White and myself, who are now at UBC. And it is really an opportunity of a lifetime to be working in a place like UBC, to be like Vancouver, exporting innovation and excellence in all the work that we're doing collectively. And it's a pretty amazing environment to be working. So just to fast forward, you know, I think people recognize the important aspects around the climate emergency. And this image was taken in September of 2020. And it was at a time when Oregon, Washington, California were basically on fire as a result of prolonged droughts and changing climate. And you know, the fact that Vancouver was seeing and witnessing the worst air quality across the globe was just a wake-up call. It was a really a wake-up call for all of us in terms of the intensity and the frequency of these events that were impacting us and impacting those specifically that were most vulnerable: the elderly, the poor, the IPOC communities, those with respiratory illness. And so really it was a call to action. And this call to action was really a mobilization of students and youth, recognizing that their futures were at stake. And this is an image of the climate strike on the UBC campus on September 27th, 2019. Over 4,000 people participated in this event. And this is an event that happened globally. It was a mass mobilization of students, youth, businesses, Indigenous communities that really see their future threatened. And it was really a wake-up call for all of us to take climate action seriously and the need to act with urgency and commitment. And not too long after that, UBC declared the climate emergency on December 5th of 2019. And the climate emergency was really instructive in that it helped UBC declare really a series of commitments to take steps that would alleviate the effects of climate change. And UBC has always been on the forefront of responding to community priorities and has been active in climate action since over a decade ago. And it is really an acknowledgement that climate change is one of the most pressing issues facing the globe today. And UBC has a special role in addressing this crisis. So with that declaration came the commitment to establishing the climate emergency engagement process, which saw over 4,000 campus residents and community members participating in forums with pop-ups, surveys, virtual discussion groups on topics ranging from climate justice, divestment, campus partnerships, teaching, learning, research, and campus operations. And that community input informed the basis of recommended actions developed by working groups, community experts, and climate emergency task force members during the summer and fall of 2020, and subsequently assembled into 9 strategic priorities, presenting a bold vision for UBC. And the climate emergency response declaration helped to underscore the urgency that helped to focus our broader sustainability agenda to take accelerated action to address climate change. And the climate emergency declaration really helped to underscore the urgency and helped to focus our broader sustainability agenda to take accelerated action. And immediately during that climate emergency process, the climate action plan was launched and initiated input that was gathered through the CE engagement. And we developed a series of expert working groups to tackle key emission areas. And we kind of group emissions into two big categories. One is around campus operations, which includes emissions from campus energy facilities, institutional buildings, fleets. And then there's the second category, which is the extended impact areas. So that includes emissions from building materials, from waste, from food systems, business air travel, and commuting. So in the development of the Climate Action Plan 2030, we are presenting a series of really bold and aggressive targets in these different categories. And the first category is around campus operations and low carbon energy supply. And the goal is, or the target is, to achieve 100% of the energy used by the academic district energy system to come from and be derived from low carbon sources. So we're in the process right now of evaluating low carbon energy sources and strategies to decarbonize our district energy system. And those detailed technical and financial feasibility studies will basically indicate a short list of options, and we'll choose what that best option is. This is a changing environment, and we realize that the technologies are going to also change in the coming years, and there's also going to be potentiality of funding and partnerships to explore that target. The other one is around new and existing buildings. And by 2030, new buildings and building renewals will target near zero operational emissions. And key actions to support that will be, and in fact have already started, the elimination of fossil fuel equipment installation in new and existing buildings. To develop what we call greenhouse gas intensity targets. So really looking at the operational intensity of the buildings that are operating across our campus. On fleets and equipment, UBC aspires to procure new vehicles and equipment that are zero emissions where feasible. This means establishing a zero emissions first procurement policy to expand UBC's fleet management program and to optimize the use of that fleet. So we basically avoid purchasing new vehicles at the forefront. And this is opportunistic too. As of yesterday, there was an announcement by the provincial government in terms of funding to help support that transition to zero emission vehicles. Waste and materials. So by 2030, UBC will apply essentially what we call a circular economy lens to enable 50% reduction in waste, progressing to a zero waste community. And key actions really about the continued implementation of our zero waste action plan. It will be programs like the expansion of our zero waste foodware strategy and reuse programs. On food systems, so we're aspiring to achieve a 50% reduction in emissions associated with food systems. And key actions are really to develop a food systems climate action strategy that includes a supplier code of conduct and new procurement guidelines. And quite honestly, UBC's been at the forefront. I look at the great work that food services and student housing are already doing to really innovate in this space. It's truly an inspiration for other universities as well. We're seeking to enhance and streamline the measurement and reporting of our food system. This is something that is currently underway. And the idea of implementing a climate food labeling program. So this idea that we give people the information to make wise choices. And this is so important because food is a major area in which UBC can build an understanding of the role we as individuals can make. The food that we consume generates emissions through production, packaging, transportation, storage, preparation. And of course, to lower these emissions by reducing our food waste is really important. The Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations estimated that if food waste was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases after the US and China. So a lot of opportunity to reduce food waste. On commuting. So by 2030, we want to achieve a 45% reduction in commuting emissions from 2010 levels. That means embracing remote working, flex days, e-learning, exploring the potential of a sustainable transportation levy to fund actions as part of our transportation demand management. There are plenty of opportunities continuing in terms of the continued support for advancing advocacy around rapid transit extension to UBC, which is critical. Aviation, again, probably the biggest dirty secret of universities. Aviation, if as an industry were a nation, it would be the world's sixth most climate polluting. So it's a recognition that we have the ability to make decisions to reduce the impacts associated with air travel. And of course, engagement and outreach programs. This is fundamental, and a big, bold target there is that by 2030, 2/3 or 66% of our UBC community, faculty, staff, and students will be aware of and actively contributing towards UBC's climate action goals. And of course, that will mean creating a more integrated cross-campus communication, engagement, and management model, and programs that really support systems change and really engaging our campus community to get involved. So our ability to effectively address climate change at UBC will require us to deploy all the intellectual and institutional capacities across this institution. This is a whole of university requirement, and it really requires systems change. We recognize that UBC is made up of 75,000 plus growing individuals, but working within communities to affect change, working with systems that help support and navigate through that change, and building a culture will really mean increasing our participation and engagement in climate action. And ultimately, that will mean lowering our emissions. So I think my slides, oh, here we go. So we implore you and invite you to actually take part collectively and as individuals to reduce air travel, swap your ride, shift your diet, pause before you buy. I think there's opportunities in the power of all of us to make decisions that really help support our climate aspirations. And there's plenty of ways to get involved. We're going to share these links with you as well, but take advantage of if you're procuring services or goods for UBC, take advantage of the UBC Sustainable Purchasing Guide. Use our online resources, find a sustainability representative, get involved by becoming a sustainability coordinator. And of course, there's plenty of opportunities to make decisions amongst yourselves to make impact in terms of addressing climate change. And of course, we have opportunities, as Eilish mentioned right at the front. Register for your next webinar on April 7th. Complete the CAP 2030 survey. And if you want more information about the Climate Action Plan, visit our website at planning.ubc.ca/climate action plan 2030. So thanks for participating. Be bold, be the change, and bend the curve. Thank you, everybody.
That's great, John. Thank you so much for that great presentation. Lots of great information, and UBC really is doing a ton of stuff, and it's beholden to us all to try and do as much as we can. So, John, we received a lot of questions in advance from people, and we won't get to them all, unfortunately. But John and I were chatting during the session there, and they're going to try and incorporate some of the questions that you provided in their Q&A on their website. So hopefully your answers already, some of them got answered in the presentation that John made, and perhaps in the breakout sessions, but also there will be, some of them will be taken and incorporated into the website that they're developing. And also, of course, you have the opportunity to do the survey and participate. So there's lots of opportunities for your voice to be heard. And so do make sure to participate. And we were talking just before, and we'll lead in with this, John and I were chatting about, you know, the goals that obviously the sustainability goals have been sort of forced upon us by COVID. You know, all these, we're not flying anywhere. We're working from home. And so we were chatting a bit, maybe John, you can share your thoughts about, you know, sort of that situation and what you think, what you'd like to see coming out of this. You know, do we go back to what we were? Do we have, so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a great question, Eilish. And I think, you know, what COVID has taught us is that as a university, as individuals, we've been incredibly resilient, noting that it's been incredibly difficult in terms of the circumstances of social isolation. But I think it's an opportunity to kind of take the good things of what we've learned through COVID to pivot and bounce forward rather than bouncing back to business as usual. And I think there is this opportunity that we can seize. And so what we do want to see going forward is opportunities around, you know, the remote work environment. And so HR is currently developing a new guideline with respect to supporting remote work arrangements, which I think having a conversations with your staff and your supervisors around how we can actually utilize that, because while we also recognize that not everybody can participate in remote work, there are significant opportunities for us to really rethink about the nature and the future of work, to really kind of reduce the commuting emissions associated with the commute back and forth to campus, the benefits in terms of health and well-being, the benefits of reduced anxiety and stress associated with that commute, and obviously the benefits in terms of reduced emissions associated with commuting. And so I think this is a real opportunity for the university to think about how we encourage remote work, how we think about e-learning, where those opportunities exist, and also balancing that with considerations around health and well-being and just the need for connectivity. I know we've been in this Zoom environment for the last year plus. I think people are anxious to kind of get back to some sense of normalcy, but let's use this as an opportunity to bounce forward rather than bouncing back, and seize on those opportunities to make lifestyle changes. And it sounds like there is an opportunity to do that through guidelines and through supporting systems and to encourage people to make those decisions.
So John, has your team been engaged in that regard around making staff recommendations for the return to work? Like have you know, because you're deeply involved in this conversation, and so you have a lot of knowledge. So have you been engaged in that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So through the CAP working groups, there was one dedicated to commuting. And so one of the recognitions of that working group was that the benefits of reducing our emissions with commuting can be supported with new HR guidelines. And so we have been working and communicating with HR in the development of that policy. HR obviously been engaging with many different operational units and faculty units and portfolios across the university, because you know what's unique about UBC is that it's very different in terms of operational needs. And so I think the endeavor is to allow for that flexibility, but also provide the enabling guidelines to support. And obviously there are other things that the university need to consider too, the supporting infrastructure to support a hybrid work environment so that people have the ability to have the IT resources, the virtual immersive environments that we can kind of bring people together. Even in terms of our professional development, I think there are opportunities to really rethink about how we can develop our profession using all these kind of great resources that are at our fingertips without hopping on a plane and traveling halfway across the globe for a conference, right? And I see these as big opportunities. It's not about saying you can't do these things, but really about the opportunity for us to make change. And I often think about the way Bonnie Henry kind of communicates around COVID. You know, it isn't a top-down approach. It's really about this philosophy that we as individuals, if we act in concert with purpose and with intent, we have the ability to make significant collective impact. And I think the other thing, and it kind of builds on the slide at the end of my presentation, it's about building a culture of change. And I think this is our opportunity. We have 10 years to act. Basically, the International Panel on Climate Change has given us, you know, this 10-year window. And I think we as a university have this opportunity, this unique opportunity to pivot, to show innovation, to show what we can do as a university collective, as a whole of a university response to addressing these key issues that are facing us today.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you're right. It will be interesting when we get back to what we call whatever normal is. I mean, you know, traveling for conferences and all that. It may not be approved, but B, it may not also be our choice because we may still not want to go on a plane anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how we come out of this. But I agree with you on all the points you mentioned. The other thing is, and one of the questions that came up, and we'll probably wrap up on this one is, now we've talked about ways of staff of getting involved. Now, you know, we all have busy work lives and lives. And of course, at the moment, we can't even think about being a sustainability coordinator or these sort of things that normally would meet in person. So it's a bit hard for us even to imagine. But, you know, are there simple things that staff can do to help organize it? Like, is there, you know, because we've got some good response from people. People are saying, well, yeah, I'd like to be involved. So are there simple things that people can do to, you know, a different wide range of things that people can do to get involved? And maybe you've got some ideas there.
Definitely, I have a lot of ideas, and you know, Tawny is on the call here as well. You know, so there we can support facilitating that change. I mean, we have a sustainability coordinators program, which really is an opportunity for you to get involved, to make those changes, and to be a champion on behalf of your unit. And I think that has demonstrated real success. I think the other thing is some of these choices are they have mutual benefits. And I think about, you know, choices that we make in our everyday, you know, activities, you know, the food choices that we make. So that, you know, I love meat, but I realize that I can make a significant choice without changing my lifestyle significantly, just by the choices I make in terms of what I'm purchasing in terms of my food. Thinking about the packaging that comes with my food. So thinking about reusing your containers. All of these things are pretty simple, and they're also saving you money and actually good for your health and your diet. and it also helps to support the ambitions of what we want to do collectively as an institution. So I think, as individuals, but working collectively, we have the opportunity in food choices, in the way we commute to and from work, whether that's remote working or hopping on a bicycle 1 or 2 days or taking transit. These are all options. It's not to say that you have to do these things. It's about there are options, and we can actually help facilitate you making those choices through the programs and connecting you to the information and toolkits. The team is working on a whole series of information campaigns that will help kind of connect people to those opportunities. But, a real simple one that we were just talking about over the break is maybe put this on a standing agenda item as part of your staff meetings or your unit meetings. What can you do as a unit to make some of these changes, whether that's engaging in the green office program, or becoming a sustainability coordinator, or reducing your waste, or having a little cooperation in terms of commuting to work. There's all these great opportunities, and I think this is something that we want to do to help support and navigate that change, is provide you with the tools and the information to do that. But ultimately, it needs champions. It needs champions across the institution, in every corner, every unit, every portfolio, to help make that change.
That's great, John. Yeah, no, thank you. And I think it's good to know that, there are things that we can do in a small way, but also then build up to, and being more involved. So I think that's very important. I think, as I said, we'll wrap it up there. I want to thank John so much for the presentation, and thank you to all the team members too, to Bud, Maxi, Madeline, Emma, Tony, and Aviva. Okay, and there's a question. I want to become a champion. Where can I learn more about this engagement possibility? Well, you'll get information. I was going to say, after this, we will send you out some information, and we will. Don't worry. You'll have lots of opportunities to get involved. So we will definitely share that information with you. It's such a timely conversation. It's such an important conversation. So thank you all for joining us today. I want to acknowledge Stacy and Jenny from St. John's College for all their work in setting up Hot Lunch every month. They do a lot of work in the background, and this couldn't happen without them. And of course, thank you to my other committee members too, who for their ongoing support of this program. And we try and come up with interesting people like John Madden to talk to us and get to know. And really, UBC is such a vibrant community and such a fascinating. I know we're all missing it. I know I am. I can't wait to get back on campus. But connections like this through Hot Lunch are just so important. So delighted to see you all. The next speaker on April the 28th is going to be Chancellor Stephen Point. And that will be a great presentation. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. And so we look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, have a lovely long weekend for those of you that are taking that time. Because sometimes when we're working from home, we forget that we can, we are actually off work. It's weird, but enjoy the long weekend, enjoy this sunshine as long as it lasts. And thank you all again for joining us, and see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you all.